Great, thank you. I'll call to order the February 11th, 2021 meeting of the Town of North Andover Community Preservation Committee. I'll start by reading our required preamble. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the North Andover Community Preservation Committee will be conducted by remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8, Verizon Channel 26, or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time by technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay. With that, I think for minute purposes, I will do a quick roll call. So just please announce yourself as present. Brian Roach, Chair, present. John Simons,
present.
Bill Callahan,
present.
Rick Green,
Present.
CJ Ganji,
present.
Tracy Watson,
present. Apologize, just on the phone tonight.
No worries. John Maven,
present.
Terry, have you joined yet? Not yet. Okay. And Dan Beckley, our staff member. Okay. With that, I think we'll move into the agenda. Short agenda, but we got a couple of meaty things to discuss as we get into it. So you'll see on here, it's actually very similar to last month's agenda, but we're going to get some updates on some of these stats. So Dan, if you could give everybody maybe a quick update on where we stand on the Osgood Oostler parking lot, and just let everybody know kind of where we're at this point.
Yep. So not a ton to update, but essentially the project went before the planning board with a request for waiver of site plan review. The waiver was denied, and the town is going to take the project on from here if they decide to build a parking lot, and when. I'll be sure to update you all, and I'm sure you'll hear about it through other channels. But they're putting that on hold for now because site plan review would involve much more intensive work on the project, probably requiring stuff from the town's engineering department and things like that. And so currently they're not approaching the project. They may decide not to move forward with it in the future. But it's out of the CBC's hand at this point, and the town will take it over and do with it as they please.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dan. Anyone have any questions for Dan on this one in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I never understood. I thought it was in the town's hand before we asked for site plan waiver, because the town would be the one to put the, to actually construct the lot. So, how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, it was never in the CPC's full control to begin with, but you guys weighed in on like how big you want the parking lot to be and things like that. And this project I think started in like 2012. So it's just been going on for a long time, and it basically, the Community Preservation Committee doesn't have to do anything related to the project.
No, I have a question. So if the project that was approved at town meeting that included a parking lot, and that's kind of, I guess that's not the answer. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for Bill. But if approved at town meeting with through everything, I mean, the answer that kind of that you're giving is, well, it's out of CPC hands. I understand that, but it also reverts back to a town meeting vote. So I think I'm looking personally for a little bit more technical or a little bit more detail. I mean, I should have prefaced this with, you know, if there's actual issues and neighbors and all of that, I totally get it. And if it has to run through the planning board for a public hearing, I guess I understand that as well. Certainly not looking to annoy the entire neighborhood, but it is something that's already been voted on at town meeting with a parking lot in it and those kinds of things. So I just would like a little bit more information, not tonight, I'm not putting you on the spot, but you know, it's out of CPC hands, is kind of, for me, not totally adequate.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, to go back to kind of the point that I started to make, I would like to make it known to, you know, the town writ large, that this is a priority because it was a, you know, this was not a small project. This was $1 million of funds, which is a significant outlay for open space preservation. And it was quite different than many other open space projects that we've done, where it's clearly, you know, a wooded lot in the middle, you know, on the edge of a town or maybe adjacent to some other preservation land. So this one was, you know, I think got more scrutiny than most ones would. You know, normally open space comes up and we say, like Glenny Woodlot sailed, you know, no questions. Everyone was on board because it was a wooded area near the town farm. And, you know, and we put a parking lot in and it was fine. But this one was a little different because it is adjacent to conservation land. And it was positioned as another avenue, another way into conservation land, and that more people could access conservation land from this particular lot, you know, which for all intents and purposes today looks like the front yard. I mean, what we have is we essentially have like the yard of a large house and some of the land around it. You know, this is very different than what we normally do. So when it was put as a package where you had a parking lot that would be accessible and then a path that would run up, you know, and up to the conservation land, it made sense as a conservation project that would allow for recreation, you
Well,
know? So I think, I mean, I just like to say, like, I would like this committee to put forward a letter to the town that says, we supported this project because it had an active recreational purpose. And we'd like to see that purpose fulfilled by the creation of, you know, a trailhead and a parking lot.
So if I could just add a little more color on that, Bill, from, you know, having walked the lot with Glenn from Phonat and with Gene and with Amy Maxter from Concom and getting it. I think, Dan, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but nothing's stopping the creation of the trail network that's proposed for that lot. I think Glenn is still planning on moving forward with that and connecting that trail network to the existing, I think, Half Mile Hill and other trails. So that lot will become very accessible. I think the question becomes accessible from where, and that's, you know, I think in the short term, it's very accessible from the existing Stevens Estate parking area right now. So the accessibility of the lot is still being met from that perspective. The question regarding the parking lot, and from what, you know, I've been able to see from the planning board discussion, there's are legit neighbor concerns that have been raised. You know, John or Dan, you guys can, you know, speak probably more in more detail to those specific items, which I think is what led to the denial of the site plan waiver approval. To go back to the site plan process, which then just makes it more of an extensive process. And at that point, yeah, it is a little out of our hands. I hear you on making our opinions felt to the town. I think that's perfectly fair and reasonable. But we may be out of our hands at that point, is I think what Dan's saying.
yeah, so there were most of the neighbors were not aware that the town had bought the land because it happened 8 years ago. And were pretty put off by the fact that, there was a proposal to build a parking lot there. So,
But Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, the proposal for the trail network is still moving forward, correct?
the proposal for the trail network is still moving forward. I don't know when. But it's distinct from the parking lot.
Yeah, if I could add to this, this is Jack Maven from Conservation. These passive recreation trails are very important to open space, and it's very important that we have trail access and the passive recreation going on. All that sounds good, but unless there is parking for the hikers, it just doesn't work. So, if it is accessible in a different way, if there are other options to provide hikers with parking, I guess I'll wait that out. But there has to be a way to do this. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Now, I apologize because I don't have really any background on this, but I would like to work offline with someone that maybe from Phonat that has the details that where I could support it from my conservation standpoint. So I guess.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I would want to say is it's kind of like, in one sense, there's a way you could look at this and you could say, town meeting passed on the application, funded it, created a conservation restriction, and then the town did not build the parking lot. And now they're saying, well, we didn't build it. Now no one knows about it. So now we can't build it. So it's kind of like we didn't do the right thing the first time. So, now we can't do the right thing.
No, but I don't think that's what I don't think that's what anyone's saying. I think Dan's commentary is that I think a lot of the neighbors were maybe unaware, and then when they got their abutter notices on the proposed project, they kind of
Brian,
right?
If just to interject, and again, I apologize. I'm just on the phone, so my interjecting could be choppy. I apologize. And should there be an issue, a real issue? Okay, I understand that, but I want to kind of reiterate my concerns that the neighbors did know about this. It was on a town meeting warrant. It was voted on at a town meeting warrant. So now that's where I guess I just really want to know how I'm with Bill in the sense of that this was $1 million. We knew there was a parking lot attached. We knew it was going to, allow access. Granted, it's somebody's front yard, but it is what it is. That's how it passed at town meeting. So now, all these years later, because the town didn't do the right thing initially, neighbors are like, oh, hold on, what's happening? But it's already been decided 6 years ago or 8 years ago, I forget. But so I guess I'm a little, and again, can happen after the meeting. I'd like to know how it goes from approval to non-approval under a town meeting vote. I'm just curious about that because I'm nervous that now it's not going to happen where it's been called for year after year after year so folks can actually get access to the trail.
So there's a few, I want to reiterate that this is not a denial of the parking lot. It is being put on hold, and the CPC no longer has a say in how the parking lot goes forward.
So the parking lot will go forward. It'll just be up to how planning board decides it.
Okay, so I know that the approval for the grant included a parking lot. Sometimes projects are not completed and the project gets closed out and the CPC gets their money back. that happens.
Yeah, I understand how it
And-
works. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm just saying that if the parking lot is uncompleted, that's what would likely happen. I'm not saying that the parking lot won't be completed. Additionally, both the neighbors and town staff realize that there is direct access from the Stevens Estate parking lot. The town owns an easement on the driveway up to the fields in the Upper Oozler property that allows direct access from Edgewood.
Right, right.
So that is
And
also
again, that's not what was voted on at town meeting, though. I know I'm sounding so combative, and my apologies. Again, you can tell me offline. I can, hear it tomorrow, Monday. If someone can just explain the difference between what was voted on at town meeting and what's happening now. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to make big waves tonight by any stretch. If there is an actual issue and things have to change, I understand that CPC projects change all the time. I totally get that. I'm just curious that we're moving in the right direction with it. That's all.
Yeah, I don't think, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that, and here's where I think the as a CPC we've kind of been advisory, right? Following up on projects that we vote on and projects that we approve, and this happened long before my time. Is we are a funding body, right? And we're here to make sure that we're following up on what we fund, but we aren't ultimately the doers. We fund the project and it gets turned over to the care and custody of the town. In this case, the Conservation Commission, I believe, is the one who has the care and custody of this particular property. So we do, in some ways, lose our control of that, through the statute. But Bill, I don't think your proposal that you're making is a bad idea, to remind the town that we feel this is important. We feel it's consistent with not only what the committee approved, but what with town meeting ultimately approved and the taxpayers ultimately approved a number of years ago, and consistent with the master plan and everything else. I don't think there's any harm in us writing a letter, continue to support it. Just understanding that, like a lot of these other projects, it does, we do lose the control of that. I mean, as much as we're accountable to the taxpayers, I mean, so is the rest of the town, in certain, I think, decisions that we made and priorities and every kind of projects. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, that's kind of where we're at, is the town's got to look at this and say, all the projects we have going on, now we've got to deal with going through the site plan approval process to do this. It gets mixed into the same priority bucket as everything else. Is that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but or put you on the spot,
I'm really just saying that since I have been coming to these meetings, we'd asked for input on how big the parking lot should be and how it should be arranged. That wasn't a part of the application. That was just something we were doing to get your guys' input. And I'm saying going forward, however the town decides to go forward with a parking lot is going to be up to the town, because there was no clear designation on how many parking spaces there needed to be, how the parking lot needed to be built. And so I'm just updating you on the status of the project, and that we're probably not going to seek CPC input on how the project moves forward. But I'm not saying the project isn't moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, I realize that I may have put you on the defensive, and you've come into this after, several years of people, saying, hey, this was part of the deal and it hasn't been done. So I want to, and you've been very helpful, and you've definitely been an advocate for us, and we certainly appreciate that. So my intent in no way, shape, or form was to, say this. I guess, I kind of heard like the town might not be interested in pushing forward with this. And I just want to, the town as the body that would come to the planning board and say, this is what we want to do. I just want to make sure that step happens, in due course. And by all means, I think, site plan review can be very helpful. Should someone take a look at it? 100%. That's totally fine. And that's totally within, the rights of the abutters to want to make sure that something fits with the neighborhood and so forth and so on. That's all good. I mean, I guess, I just want to make sure that it's known that that there's a countervailing force to say, hey, this was what was proposed. This is why it was proposed. This is why it was funded to the tune of, over $1 million. And let's make sure that, that is there too. Because if we just kind of say, well, there's, concerns and questions, and it might be a little hard, and we back off entirely, that wouldn't be right. So if we were to put a letter forward to say, this is what we intended when we funded this project, and we'd like to see it, we'd like to see it through in due course, and we understand that there are procedural, procedures that have to be followed. We're patient. We've been waiting for a while, and we'll continue to wait and do whatever we can do to advocate for this.
Okay. Bill, is that a motion that you're making?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to make a motion that we send a letter, to the town manager expressing our wish to see this project go through the process and come to fruition.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Well, can we speak to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah, this is Terry. I'm sorry I was late for the meeting, but I do want just to say a couple things about that. We've been waiting a long time for sure. We're kind of not, the trails keep getting filled in as we clear them, and we're trying to get a parking lot of some sort, but just want to be able to have access to what we did. And it's kind of funny that CPC won't have a say, only because we made the deal, and there was a reason we wanted a parking lot, and there was a reason we made the deal. And now we're saying, okay, well, we don't need you anymore. That's okay, but at least a letter is a minimum. And I just feel it's kind of funny that if we're going to make these deals and then be told afterwards, you guys are out of it, somebody else is going to finish this. Because our name is kind of on it when we went to town meeting and we spoke for it. So that's just my 2 cents. That's all I got to say. But I'll second that motion.
Okay. All right. And any further discussion on the motion? Okay. All right. We'll go
I
to
think John's talking. But
Yeah, the only observation I would make is that who's going to write the letter and what's going to be in it? Because I think there's part of what we have to do here is to say, Bill, is your thing, you're requesting that they explain the decision-making process, or is it a demand that we build a parking lot of a certain size?
No, I mean, 100% in terms of size and site plan review and so forth. I just want to make sure that the town proceeds through goes to the planning board with a proposal and has a site, does whatever it can to get this done. So in other words, I know it's, in the middle of COVID, we've got vaccination, plenty of challenges going on in the town. So I'm not trying to say that this has to happen in any particular way, but I just want to make sure that it moves forward.
I guess I would frame it slightly differently. That I think what we would certainly all agree to is we want to have access to the property in a way that provides reasonable access for the citizens of the town to the property. So, if we end up with there might be 3 or 4 different ways to do it. It might be, what the Trails Committee may say is maybe all you need is ability to park on Osgood Street. Maybe they say it's parking. Maybe they say you could do it in the driveway someplace else. Maybe they would prefer something. I mean, my only point is I don't want to lock us into a specific answer that we're doing. I think that at this point, if people have different views on it, on the professional staff in the Trails Committee and the Conservation Commission, we should listen to that. So,
I mean, when I think about it, you know, what seems to be clear to me is, in some point, and I'm not wedded to the parking lot being on the spot that we looked at right off Osgood. You know, I mean, it could be up that road, you know, further, you know, a little bit. I know that road that is kind of in between Edgewood and the property, you know, that the town owns is there. But I think we need a sign. I think we need trails, and definitely I think there has to be some room for, you know, access in a car. So I'm not saying like it has to be this parking lot in that place, but I think we should say it should go forward as, you know, with access, accessibility. You know, I think, and those are two different things, right? Like you can have access from Stevens Estate, but that doesn't mean it's accessible, right, to a bunch of people. If you don't build a trail, you don't put a trail map up, you don't have a sign. I mean, those are some of the things that I think we would definitely want. We want the town to know that this is conservation land, that it was funded by the CPC, and that it's, you know, accessible and able to be used. So I mean, I'd be happy to. I mean, I think one way we could do it is to, you know, is to designate. You know, I'd be happy to do it myself. Come back, you know, next month with a letter that says, you know, that we could wordsmith and vote on the text if we want to do that.
yeah, I think that would be a good idea to get some consensus, and it would also be helpful to provide direction to the town, because, you know, I don't think in the end the situation is necessarily adversarial. We can collaborate, and I think the tone is important and the objective is important. So if you want to take a chance at writing that, I think that would be great.
If I can say one more thing, it was only a little over a year ago that we were thinking of closing off that parking lot and giving away the parking lot at the Stevens Estate to a private organization. They were going to move our parking lot down to the lower end of the entrance, which wouldn't have worked at all for this piece of property. I'm just saying that was another.
That was never going to happen in a billion years, despite whether some people wanted it to happen.
Yep, I hope not.
No way that would have happened. There were too many roadblocks in the way. That was never going to happen.
Okay. All right. So, so Bill, we're gonna take a stab at this letter. I think we probably don't need to vote on anything for this right now, but if you draft it, we can talk about it next month and make a vote at that point. That's okay.
Sure, I can do that. So.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll table that for now. All right. Any other questions on this? Great. All right, and Dan, appreciate your update on it. Again, this one goes back a long way. So you know, I know you're kind of stepping into this new on this one. So okay. Next on the agenda, signage update. Rick, I think you and Terry worked together and did some great work. Thank you very much. Hopefully everyone got a chance to look at the packet at the group of signs that Rick put together. I don't know, Rick, if you want to just maybe touch on it quickly for us.
Sure. So I worked with Dawn from Dawn Sign Tech to come up with really 4 sign options. One was for the fields, recreation, athletic fields, which is what you see with the Carl Thomas Field sign. Another one has Hollywood Lot on it. We kept the sign size of Greenbelt, which was 2x3. I did tell Dawn's sign that if we needed to go to 3x3, we could probably do that, depending upon how the wording fit on. But what she came up with was 2x3. It looks pretty good to me. And then on the historic properties, I gave a couple of different options. One was probably to have a sign similar to the field signs, but probably smaller in size, like Machine Shop Village. The other one was a single granite post with a smaller sign, more in the way of the Glennywood lot. Just as a couple of examples, I figured where it's a historic building or property, maybe the granite blends in better. We certainly could adapt it to mount to the side of the building if that was an option. But this is just some ideas for us to look at. Obviously, the field sign is, and really the general design of the signs is consistent with the town has gone to it, the athletic fields and the municipal properties as well. So obviously I'm open for comments. Whatever changes we want to decide as a board, I'll certainly go back to Dawn and we can finalize them.
Rick, I love these, and you're working with a great lady. These, I think they look great. I love them.
Is everybody okay with the wording? I tried to pretty much verbatim copy from what we came up with at the last meeting.
Yeah, no, I like that.
I see no issue. I mean, you know, just my opinion on this is that I think it's great work. I think it matches with the intent of what we're looking to do. My only question becomes, how fast can we start getting them up, and what's our process to make sure that they do get up? I think that's probably the next things I want to tackle. I don't see any issues beyond that.
Okay, well, I know that Dave Rimmer is very eager to get moving on Glennywood lot. As a matter of fact, when he found out we were working with Don Sign Tech, he wanted to pretty much give the sign to us. I just told him, we were going to finalize a sign design at this, and if it's good, I can certainly give him the one for the open space and direct him over to Dawn Sign Tech, because obviously she'll be the one that will have the proof for the sign.
That's okay. Well, again, I don't think there's anything we need to vote on at this point, unless anyone sees a reason otherwise. I guess my question regarding signs now is our next step. And Dan, maybe you can kind of assist me in this, is how do we go about, going through the permitting process and getting these put on various lots? I'll just tackle, we'll go right back to 623 Osgood at this point. How do we as a committee ensure that we start getting this signage up on the projects that we funded across the town?
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
Also, the sign, there's not major changes, but there's a proposal for updates to the sign bylaw. So I especially don't know. I don't think that would particularly impact what you're trying to do here. I guess, is your intent to retroactively put these on properties that, the funding's been closed out on? Do you want these, do you want this additional cost just included in every upcoming grant? Who do you expect to bear the cost? Who do you want to put in charge of doing this?
All right, we'll tackle the first question first, and I have my own thoughts. But I'll put it back out to the committee in terms of the retroactive nature of it.
Yeah, I think we want to do it. I know we had talked in previous years about using funds that we set aside, like John, $30,000-$40,000 a year that we set aside for administrative expenses for the CPC. Would that be an appropriate sort of?
John, you're mute.
Yeah, you can use that administrative money for signs and things like that. That's fine.
I can tell you the way it typically happens, at least at the athletic fields. Typically, the town purchases the sign through Dawn, and then they have one of their annual contractors, which is typically ARCO or FP Riley, install the granite posts and the signs, and that's typically how that works. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I do believe I have estimates from last year as to what that was going to cost per sign. I know that when the Grogan's project went out to bid, one of the additive alternate items was the field sign, which I think came in at about $6,500. But I know that doing it through the way the town does it, it's a lot less than that, and it's probably about 3,500.
So then the question becomes getting it accomplished, right? So the playgrounds, I think we can check off, we've dealt with previously for those signs, for those projects. I'm not even certain. I think I'd almost have to do a full project review of everything that we've funded and understand where a sign's appropriate and where a sign is needed. And then maybe we have to wrap our arms around what kind of budget that may look like, frankly.
Brian, you might have to ask somebody about that. I asked that question, and there's certain projects, once they're closed out, the sign doesn't come into play anymore. You can't use CPC money on it. So you're going to have to ask that question.
And that, I think that's where we were talking about the administrative funds possibly coming into play.
Yeah, I don't know. I talked to them down there, and it was just, I wanted to go back and put them on some of the playgrounds we had already done and didn't have it. And they told me that we were not able to do that.
Okay.
I mean, then the other question is, we're going into a new funding cycle. Is it worth it just to work up a quick spreadsheet and come up with our own proposal to say, we'd like to put signs in these places?
We can't apply to ourselves for our own funding.
No, I mean,
But the town could.
The town could.
The town.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, signs have been a conversation for a couple of years now. I see why the town manager's office couldn't quickly throw together a proposal and make sure that these signs hit all the old projects too. I'm with Bill on that.
I mean, I could certainly work with the town. I did last year on a proposal that I ended up withdrawing, but that was basically to replace all of the signs at the athletic fields with the sign I showed you, like Kyle Thomas. But I did put actually together an estimate for that, and I do have some budget numbers. That obviously is the more expensive sign of the three.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe Rick, that's something that could come forth this year, and for the athletic fields is, what you would actually withdrew last year, combine it all together for this year. Is that a doable thing, or?
Yeah, I mean, Rick, if I got you a list of all the projects and you and I had a quick conversation offline, checking boxes, how long do you think it would take to put together?
Not long. I just need to go back into my estimate and really change some numbers and just do it for each property.
All right. Well, why don't we plan to do that? Take that offline and
Okay.
see if that'll bring something up to discuss a little bit later. But we'll maybe take that next step. But overall, listen, thank you for all your work on this so far. The signs look fantastic. So.
Well, I just have one more thing to add on the sign similar to Glennywood Lot. Now that's obviously proposed as pressure treated lumber. So I don't know if the committee wants to see something that's going to last and is perpetual, like a granite post. Obviously, a pressure treated post probably blends in with conservation better. However, it's more susceptible to damage, as well as eventually over time it rots, probably 20 years. I don't know if that's a concern. If it's not, it's fine the way it is.
Question becomes who's dealing with it in 20 years at that point, right? The town, I think, at that point has to deal with it. And I don't know that I don't know that it's really necessarily our place to get into that level of detail on these things. Since we're not going to be maintaining it, we're not going to be dealing with it. It really only becomes a question of cost.
Okay.
I mean, feel free to correct me if you disagree, but I just don't know that it's our place to necessarily micromanage that detail.
Okay, I just wanted to put it out there.
Yep. Okay. Okay, but again, thank you so much for that, Rick. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, so moving to the next item on the agenda, project submittal review. So this is our annual meeting where we get all the projects in, and then we kind of decide in our supplemental meetings before we can make our recommendations up through the town. So Dan diligently put together a summary of all of the requests that were put forward this year, which is in our packet. Hopefully everyone got a chance to at least review these summaries. Dan, is this complete with everything that came in? Then a couple came in like later in that day, right? I think it has everything. There's nothing I saw that's missing, so just want to confirm. You're on mute, Dan.
I sent Jillian the updated one.
Okay.
I was looking at the wrong folder.
Okay.
If it has the housing consultant on it, then it's the most up to date.
It does. Yep, it does. Okay. All right, so maybe we'll, there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about with regard to this. One, I want to go through, I don't want to talk in too much detail about all these projects right now. I think we'll do that in our supplemental meetings, but we want to decide who we want to have in to present on each of these. So if we can just maybe tackle these one at a time, and then we'll kind of get a sense of how many people we want to have in, how many additional meetings we have to try to have between now and our March meeting to try and bang these out, if that works for everybody. First on the list, the Affordable Housing Trust, same grant that we've gone through the last 5 years, coming in from Laurie Burzlaff. I think if you looked at the application, Laurie's obviously very detailed and thorough. I think we all know how it goes for, but it might give Laurie an opportunity to come in and just give us a quick update if everyone would like to hear that. If not, I think it's very standard to the last few years that we've gotten. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, my inclination is to pass for now and have her in separately where we could have a broader conversation.
But you'd like to have her in. I'm not suggesting we vote on any of these right now, John, but I'm just,
Yeah, but I don't think we need to have her in during, later this month or early March.
I agree.
I would agree. Okay. Okay, great. I'm going to skip over the two for the time being that Dan flagged as ineligible for funding. We'll get back to those. The Bradstreet School Memorial, this is a project we funded back in 2015 that has finally started some work given a number of different changes with where it was going to be located and everything else. So Stan Limpert is the applicant for this. So they're looking for some additional money. I definitely think it's worth having Stan in to discuss the delays, the increase. And Dan, I think we'll need to do a little bit more studying over the allowable nature of the bronze plaques that are associated with this. But I think it's definitely worth having Stan in. Everyone agree?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Gateway improvements to the historic causeway and Stone Arch Trail submitted by planning. So Gene and Peter Boynton, I believe, submitted this. I learned something new today. We have a harbor master. I was unaware of that.
Yeah, Peter's the harbor master.
Yeah, I was wholly unaware. I think it makes sense to have Gene come in and talk about this one, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Hiring consultant for housing analysis submitted by the town planner to meet our 40B requirements. I think it's always worthwhile to have Melissa in to discuss. If everyone agrees.
Was she doing that or was Gene doing that one?
Dan, did Melissa submit this one or did I read that wrong?
Melissa
submitted by
submitted the consultant for.
Melissa did?
Oh, okay.
All right. Okay. North Andover Housing Authority. We just had Maggie in for such a lengthy meeting. It looks like, from my quick reading, everything here is very consistent with the stuff that we discussed a couple of meetings ago. I don't know if it's necessary to drag her back to another meeting, and it was certainly a thorough application. Tracy, I don't know if you have a different opinion on that or not.
No, I don't think we need to bring her back unless anybody has additional questions. I worked with her on the application too. And, from our previous meeting with her, she pretty much laid out, and I think she brought forth what we were looking for. So I don't think she needs to come back in, but I'm sure she'd be happy to.
Okay. Well, I think we'll probably spare her the time for that. I think there's certainly enough for us to go on. So
She'll appreciate that. She's in her third trimester, so I'm sure she'd appreciate it.
Okay.
One less meeting.
The North Andover Rail Trail Phase 1 project. Dan, who would be the appropriate person to have come in to talk about this?
Probably Andrew Shapiro.
Andrew Shapiro?
Probably.
Okay.
He might delegate it to me, but
Okay.
he's the one who submitted the application.
Okay. Playground master plan, again, very similar to the Affordable Housing Trust application. You know, this is the final allocation of a multi-year project. I think, John, maybe you had made a mention at one point that this would be a really good one to go do a look back on the overall funding of the project. I think we know enough about it. Someone go on mute, please. I think it may make sense when we have Laurie back to discuss housing. We probably discuss this one at the same time, right? She's the applicant for this one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Do a post-mortem when we're done. I don't need to bring her in for this. The only thing we might want to do is in a note or something, find out if there's, for the remaining playgrounds, whether there's any community group and how they're going to do the outreach and so forth, just to make sure that it, typically I think the model in every one of these is that the town works with the people that in that neighborhood who benefit from it on a project that meets their needs.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they certainly went through that with the Appland project recently and everything else. So
yeah.
Okay. So just so I understand the question, you want to double check just to make sure there's a community group discussion outreach for the remaining projects.
Yeah, just so we know, I don't think we need to have them in, but just to make sure that they do that and it's in good order.
Yep, I don't think that would be an issue at all. Okay. Ridgewood came through with the next phase of their historic landscape project, as well as the second burial ground. I was reading through the application earlier. I think this is definitely something we need to have them in to discuss, especially with the addition of the second burial ground to it. I want to kind of understand how that dovetails with and maybe CJ, maybe you can shed some light on this, on what we've already funded for the second burial ground. I'm guessing they're two separate projects.
Yes, yeah. So the First Parish Church turned the second, who previously owned the second burying ground, is in the process of turning it over to Ridgewood.
Okay.
So they're going to be, obviously, the project is still ongoing, and there's going to need to be, just like with the first burying ground, it's going to be, it's done in phases. So this, I think, is the second phase of the second burying ground that they're looking for funding for.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I think we'll plan to have that group in for such a, they came in last year. I think for such a substantial request, we probably ought to have them in to discuss it. All right. The last three were all submitted by Michael Smolak. One is regarding some recreation trails around his around Smolak Farms area, which I think it's definitely warrant having him in to discuss it, because the number of questions that we probably have on the application. He also submitted two sculpture projects, historic sculpture projects, which by the statute are really not eligible for CPA funding, because we can't allow for creation of historic commemoration. These are projects that are probably best suited for other sorts of fundraising and just aren't eligible. I don't think we have any real choice in the matter. So I think what I'd like to do, if everyone's okay with that, is reach out to Mr. Smolak and at least discuss that aspect of those two with them, because they're substantial requests. And also perhaps talk to them a little bit about the trails proposal to make sure it's all clear for us before we have them in, so you can be ready for any questions that we might have. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. All right. So all told, excluding the two ineligible projects, we received about 2.3 million in requests. And this is where I'm still learning a little bit. So is it fair, and people have been on the committee longer than me, we received about $900,000 in tax receipts through the first half of the fiscal year. Is it fair to assume that that number is going to be fairly level for the remaining 6 months of the fiscal year?
Yeah, Brian, if I may, I just
Yeah.
didn't have time to update the numbers, but I can basically, what we would have available to spend, and I can sit out a spreadsheet on it, is any money in the fund that's not already allocated to projects. So you look at that total amount, you subtract out, what's the remaining balance, that gives you an amount. Then what you do is you roll forward to the end of this year, because that's additional money in there. And then you add in the money that we're going to get next year, and that would be the total amount that would be available for projects. So, I mean, I think it's clear that we're going to, if we chose to fund every single thing, we would have the money to do it. Obviously, we'd like to leave a cushion sometimes because something may come up, like, if, for example, in the field project, if it had gone ahead, the problem is if we didn't have the money, we would have had to bond it. And you're allowed to bond it, but it just makes the process far more complicated.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and that's why I'm looking at the I think an older report that has 10.4 million. Then you take out the encumbrances against it, and I think that ends up only leaving us about 1.9 if no other tax receipts were to come in the next 6 months, which obviously isn't going to be the case. So that's I think you cleared that up for me. So that's my monkey math. So.
Yeah.
All right. On one more thing I wanted to address regarding our project review. I think everyone sees it at the beginning of, and this is something we'll probably tackle in future meetings after we've voted on these projects. Dan put together our overall duties from the statute, and I think it's worth noting, worth everybody taking a minute just to read regarding how the CPC is designed to interact with the various towns and town boards and other stakeholders to help guide projects and help set priorities with other towns. So that's one way we can be more proactive. I don't want to dive into it today, but if everyone could just pay a little bit of attention to that, I think we're going to tackle that when we talk about our overall process for the coming year after we get through this funding cycle, and how we can do a better job of shepherding projects through and almost a pre-application process. Dan's done a ton of work researching what some other towns do, and I think he's going to help guide us on that, in the coming months after we go through this funding cycle. So just want to give everyone the heads up on that. Mm-hmm. One other thing that actually stems out of an earlier discussion we had tonight is we had an application deadline on February 5th, but there may be other things that may arise out of some of our discussions here, whether it's regarding signage or everything else. I want to make sure that we are, as a committee, comfortable or what we want to do regarding any potential late applications, provided they get in time for us to make our recommendations to the appropriate bodies. Is there any thoughts on that? And if we are going to allow late applications, we probably need to pass a motion and vote on it. So
yeah. I mean, we ought to. I feel uncomfortable about that because we've had a consistent policy that we wouldn't, and it's like, when do we allow them in and when don't we? Mm-hmm. I mean, frankly, if the only thing we think is going to come up as a wild card is the signage, I think there's enough money in the admin pot to cover what we're likely to do over the next year. And anyway, we could wait. It's probably going to be a 2 or 3 year build out anyway. So it would be do what we can now and then fund something next year.
Yeah, John, I would agree with that. I mean, if the process is closed, we've talked in the past about how we have to be a little more strict about when the projects come in and keep you to the deadline. I mean, we've been through that many times now. So I think if the process is closed, the process is closed, and whatever we have to do over the next year, we can pull out of that admin budget, and then we can put something together for next year that's a little more comprehensive for the stuff that we've done in the past.
Brian, is there anything by the town or any town organizations that we may have caught wind of recently or anything like that? I mean, it's pandemic, things are crazy. everybody's not totally on top of their game. So, I mean, you as the chair may know better than I, but, I'm
Yeah.
weighing whether I agree with CJ and John, or if we should bend the rules just a tad this year. I hate to say it, unprecedented times, but
Yeah,
that
that's,
is,
I mean, I have heard, rumblings of some potential items. Nothing that I'm necessarily comfortable, speaking about right now because it's still really, really early on any of these things. And it is kind of the nature of the beast, given everything we've all gone through. And then, I guess what my only thought would be is, do we want to at least reserve the right for ourselves to be nimble in the event a project comes up that really can't wait a year for the next funding cycle? And how has that been dealt with in the past? I don't know that this is necessarily anything that where anyone just kind of missed the deadline or blew it off, even necessarily COVID related, but how have we been able to be more reactive in the event something transpires where we would want to be able to act?
well, I mean, the truth is CPC is not a nimble, we're not a nimble committee.
True.
That's not how we're legislated. That's not how we function, which is why, for instance, with the Affordable Housing Trust, we, kind of automatically transfer money sometimes to them because they can be more nimble than we are.
Got it.
So, that is something in the overall, the umbrella or the overall picture of CPC that in general, I'm 110% with CJ and John, CJ and John, sorry, that I'm a stickler for those schedules as well. This year, again, like I said, hate to say it, unprecedented times. I don't know what's out there. I mean, in truth, even with like the North Andover Housing Authority, had I not been prodding and kind of pushing, Maggie's a brand new director who's not really been able to meet anyone face to face because she came on board a month before the pandemic started. So I'm just saying, if we could push it out, okay. If not, I'm just weighing both sides of it. Under normal circumstances in a normal year, though, no. Schedule is schedule, calendar is calendar. But
Okay.
I was just curious if there was anything out there that anybody may have heard of that someone, kind of just woke up and went, oh, darn it, I should have done this. But I got away from them. But whatever.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Okay. I can't say with any kind of definitive nature that that's going to be the case. So, and we certainly have got plenty of stuff on our plate right now. So, we can tackle that if it comes up down the road. Okay. No need to take a vote on that. So,
And the one question I had was, I know when we last got an update on litigation, there was some thought litigation on the Fields project, the community Fields project behind the middle school. So I didn't know, you just hate to see a project get started and then, get stuck for lack of funds, because I know it's been a long time since we funded it and since it may be going. So I didn't know if it's worth a reach out to the town manager to say, like, should we be prepared for anything in case, the green light comes through, all of a sudden we're moving again.
well, I mean, those funds are earmarked and set aside right now. So
Right.
I think we need to.
Yeah.
worry.
I guess my thought was, is there any universe in which they go out to bid on this project again, because it's been so long since they did it and prices have increased to such a degree that they can't start because they don't have the funding?
I don't know the answer to that. Either way, I don't expect that there's going to be anything that's going to change in any time for this funding cycle right now, even if we're talking, 2-week period or something like that. So.
I don't believe, based on what I know, litigation wise, I probably wouldn't see this project, depending upon how the cases go, going on to construction till at least probably next spring.
All right. I'm gonna be careful. I don't want to venture too far
Yeah,
from.
yeah.
our
No, I just remember that there
So-
was some possibility of things wrapping up.
Okay. Okay. That's all we have tonight. One last thing on the agenda. We have our minutes from last meeting. Let's make a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes as drafted.
Thank you, Rick. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by CJ and John. Okay. All those in favor, I'll do a roll call vote. CJ,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Tracy. I think you have to abstain. You were not present, right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And I vote yes. So motion passes unanimously. Do we have another motion?
Motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry, Rick.
Everybody's racing for it. CJ, thank you. Rick seconded.
Second.
All right, CJ,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
John Maven,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yeah,
Terry. We lose Terry. All right. Well, I didn't think that's a yes vote at that point. Anyway, Bill,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So we are adjourned.